it's Ashley Bookishrum, and I'm back with another video, which it's been a little minute since y'all have seen me, and that's because I was taking care of a very sick little one. I did not update the community board, but she ended up being okay. We got tested for COVID. They came back negative, which the testing process was more worrisome than anything, but she's doing well. I'm doing well, so I thought we would get back into the swing of things and go ahead and make some videos. So if you hear some noise, it's because I have someone walking upstairs, and unfortunately I have to just get my filming in where I can get my filming in right now, because as I think I may have said in another video, I am full gear back into work. So whatever little pockets of time that I have to film, I'm going to use them and just make the best of it. I hope you're all okay with that, and that you just kind of stick with me through this process until I figure out a perfect schedule for filming and uploading. We're just gonna work with it. So I'm here to do my September wrap up, which it is extremely late. It typically would have come out last week, but because of course everything was just chaotic last week, I am now going to be uploading my September wrap up, my final wrap up. I did do a mid-month wrap up, which I always do. With this month in October, I'm not going to be doing a mid-month wrap up because this one is coming so late, so I didn't want to do two wrap ups back to back. So that's going to be a lot of books at the end of October to talk about, but we're not going to worry about that now. I'll figure that out when I get to that point. So of course, as always, what everyone loves is that we're going to do our stats first, and then I will show you the books that I read the first half, and then I'll go through and I'll talk about the books that I read the second half of September. So September was actually a good reading month. I read a total of 24 books for a page count of 6,271. In terms of genre, I read 1 nonfiction, 1 thriller, 1 historical fiction, 3 graphic novels, manga, comics, 10 romance / contemporary, 4 realistic fiction, 1 paranormal, and 3 that fit into the category of science fiction fantasy. In terms of the age breakdown, I read 0 in the category of children's. I need to fix that. I read 2 middle grade, 5 YA, and 17 adult. For format, I read 5 physical, 7 ebooks, and 12 audiobooks. For source, 6 were owned, 5 I borrowed from the library, 3 were review copies, 3 were from Kindle Unlimited, 3 were from Libro FM, and 5 were from Audible Escape. In terms of the other categories that I keep track of, 4 had LGBTQIA+ representation, 1 was translated, 20 were own voices or diverse, 1 was over 500 pages, 2 were rereads, and 19 were written by Black authors. I'm very, very happy with those numbers. Those are the type of numbers that I want to see every single month. Now, as of the month of August, I started adding additional statistics, which include my star ratings and my publication dates. I had 0 books that were 1 star, 1 book that was 2 stars, 0 books that were 2.5 stars, 3 that were 3 stars, 2 that were 3.5 stars, 1 that was 3.75 stars. I was really trying it with that book. 10 that were 4 stars, 2 4.5 stars, and 5 5-star reads. So this was a good reading month, not only in terms of pages, but also just pure enjoyment. I believe that my average rating last month was somewhere around like 3.6, and this month it's gone up to 3.89, which is great. That means that generally I was enjoying a lot of the stuff that I was reading in September. In terms of publication, there is a wider range, I think, than last month. 10 were published in 2020, 2 were published in 2019, 2 were published in 2018, 2 were published in 2017, 1 was published in 2016, 1 was published in 2015, 2 were published in 2014, 1 was published in 2011, 1 was published in 2007, 1 was published in 2004, and 1 was published in 1999. So for this month, I saw a wider range in terms of around half of my books were from 2020 new releases, and then the other half were all backlist books. So I think going forward, I want to see more of that divide between reading backlist and also 2020 releases, because it just gives a wider variety. So in terms of range, this is more of what I want to see going forward in future months. So like I said before, I did do a mid-month wrap-up, which I will link in the card symbol above, but I will just go ahead and list the books that I did read to the halfway point of September. The first was A Song of Wraiths and Ruins by Roseanne A. Brown, Him and Her by Shelby Mitchell, Batman Superman Volume 1 by Greg Pak, That Could Be Enough by Alyssa Cole, The Boyfriend Project by Farrah Roshan, Fire We Make by Ava Freeman, In the Doctor's Bed by Brenda Jackson, Fans Only by B. Love, Concrete Kids by Amira Leon, Lux by Ashley Woodfolk, Halfway to the Grave by Janine Frost, Flow by Kennedy Ryan, The Sisters of APF by Zane, The Wicked and the Divine by Gillian McClevey Wilson and Cowles, The Faust Act, The Coldest Winter Ever by Sister Soldier, The Promised Neverland Volume Number 1 by Caillou Shira, and When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. Okay, so the first book that I read in the second half of September was Before the Ever After by Jacqueline Woodson, and this is one of her new releases in 2020, and this focuses on a young boy by the name of ZJ. And ZJ is very, very proud of his father. He looks up to his father, and his father actually played football, and it chronicles ZJ's father coming back home from playing in the league and taking this downward spiral into just changing, just attitude changing, not remembering a lot of things, becoming more aggressive, just becoming almost suicidal in some instances. This is Jacqueline Woodson's exploration of CTE and how it not only affects the players that suffer from CTE, but also their family members. And this one was such a hard-hitting book because you literally watch ZJ questioned so much about his relationship with his father and trying to come to terms with the fact that his father is never going to be the same person, and he's at a young age where he gets it, but still emotionally it's hard for him to handle. There were so many great aspects of this book. I expect nothing less because it is Jacqueline Woodson, but I also enjoyed that Woodson included some very great secondary characters, especially ZJ's friends, who actively saw that something was going on with ZJ's father, but they had such a strong friendship that they didn't necessarily question or ask too many things about what was going on with his dad. They didn't judge him. They didn't walk away from the situation. There wasn't any type of, oh, I don't want to be affiliated with him while his dad is going through this, because at some point ZJ does talk about how people end up treating the family differently, and the fact that he has such a great support system in family and in friends was really, really great. But of course, it's Jacqueline Woodson, so the writing is so poetic, it's so well done, and there were a few times that my eyes literally watered because you could really just feel the heartbreak and pain that ZJ was going through. And this is one that I ended up listening to on audio. I would recommend listening to this one on audio because of the fact that it just brings forth a new experience in listening to ZJ's story. But it was excellent. I believe this is under 200 pages. If you've never read a Jacqueline Woodson book, y'all, please read this book. Please, please, please read this book, or just pick up any Jacqueline Woodson book. She will not fail you. And I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars. The next book that I ended up reading was actually one that I listened to on Audible Escape, and it is Vicious by LJ Shen, which is the first book in the Sinners of Saints series. And this was popular on BookTube at one point. I'm not sure exactly what happened. I think this was around the time that a lot of people were starting to read more dark romance, and this is definitely a darker romance. It is a bully romance, and it is about two characters by the name of Amelia and Vicious, and Vicious bullies her all throughout the time that she is at school. Her family actually works for his family, and he's just not a kind person, but there's a little bit more backstory to why he does what he does, but I don't want to say anything about that because it is a huge spoiler. But you see her date his best friend, and then it fast forwards and they are in New York and they come across each other again, and she's struggling to pay for anything and everything related to her well-being and her sister's well-being, and he offers to kind of help out, and of course a romance ensues. But Vicious is not a nice character, but that's the intention of the book. It is a bully romance. He's not supposed to be a nice person, and you see their romance develop, of course, but as I always said, like, I don't want to go too much into it because it feels like anything related to why Vicious is the way that he is going to be considered a spoiler, but you learn why he is the way he is and how Amelia and him kind of work together to resolve a lot of the issues that he's been going through. It wasn't the dark side of this romance that bothered me, because I've read dark romance. I've read romances darker than this. It was, I think, Shin's writing style for me, I just didn't mesh with it well. I felt like it was a little bit on the choppy side. I feel like she laced a lot of this book with tropes. It felt like it was trope after trope after trope, which wasn't exactly not enjoyable, but it wasn't exactly enjoyable either. I fell somewhere in the middle, and it took me a little while to become like accustomed to her writing style, which I think will prepare me in future situations where I do read her books. For this one, I struggled a little bit, and her writing style actually kept me from connecting with the characters as much as I wanted to, but it was very much so a plot-driven book for me. I think the plot is what kept me going, because I did reach a point in the book where I was like, I don't even know if I want to continue this book. But the plot and the story behind Vicious's, I guess, character development was interesting, but I still just didn't connect to them. I didn't buy into their romance. I didn't buy into their characters. I was empathetic to some situations that did happen, but I just didn't feel that instantaneous connection. But it wasn't a bad book, but it wasn't like a favorite book either, and I'm not sure whether I want to continue the series or not. I think the rest of the books take place from different character perspectives and are different romances. I could be terribly wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that's how it's gonna go, because their situation definitely didn't wrap up. So I don't know if I want to continue, but I did end up giving this one 3.5 stars. So the next book that I ended up listening to was Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. And of course, this was going to be amazing because Elizabeth Acevedo just does some brilliant things with her writing. And this is her latest release. And this was such a big buzz, I believe, when it came out sometime during the summer. A lot of people were reading it. I held off on reading it because I actually wanted to wait until I could have access to the audio. And my library ended up getting a copy of the audio version, so I listened to her read this. It was her and it was somebody else, and I can't remember the name of the other narrator, but it was two of them going back and forth, and it was just a really good experience reading the book that way. And this is about two individuals by the name of Yahara and Camino, and I think I'm saying her name wrong. I can't remember the exact pronunciation for her name, but I was dead set on remembering Yahara's pronunciation. But they are two individuals. Yahara lives in the States and Camino lives in the Dominican Republic. And essentially what ends up happening is that, this is not a spoiler, this is definitely in the summary of the book. So these two girls end up finding out that they are sisters related through their father, who did not tell them that the other existed, and they only find out because their father ends up dying in a plane crash on his way to visit the Dominican Republic, and they then find out that they are related. And it really touches on their relationship that they build with each other, which part of me wishes that we would just get another part of this in which we are able to explore the relationship that ensues between the two of them. But it has a lot to do with identity. It has a lot to do with familial relationships and understanding that sometimes when we put figures, whether they're parental figures or just someone on a pedestal, it's hard for us to accept when they are not who we expect them to be. And it really shows the heart and depth of the fact that parents are human. They make a lot of mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes are not clear to us or obvious to us when we're younger. And sometimes even when we're older, we still look at our parents or our parental figures as superheroes. And in this case, I think both girls did look up to their father as their confidant, their friend, their ultimate dad, and he failed them both. And it's tough on both of them because they can't get retribution in asking him why he did what he did and why he kept them from each other and why he kept all these familiar secrets. It's once he's died, that secret dies with him. So they both have to handle grief in a way of not just grieving a father that they've lost, but also they can't hold him accountable for his actions. And that's the part that's partially sad, but then also because they don't feel like they can be angry. I mean, anyone would be genuinely angry at a parent from withholding this type of information from them, but how do you handle that anger when you're supposed to be grieving at the same time? So it explores so many things. There is great rep in this book. One of our characters is a queer. There is just so much rich discussion and poetry, and this book is actually based on the flight that took off from, I believe, New York City and was headed to the Dominican Republic. It was flight AA587, and I'm going to double check that really quick. So yes, it was flight AA587, and this plane crash took place 2 months after September 11th, and a lot of people don't know about it, which is horrifying because of the fact this is the second deadliest aerial disaster in United States history, I believe. And a lot of it, I believe, has to do with the fact that it was so close to September 11th, and it was thought to be a terrorist attack, and then once it wasn't, media just stopped paying attention. And I think that that says a lot too about our media coverage and what is considered important and what is not considered important. And Elizabeth Acevedo does write in her author's note that more than, I think, like 90%, if not more than that, of the people on this plane were headed back to the Dominican Republic. And it's just sad that that country and this community suffered so much pain over this disaster, and it's something that is not really even discussed or talked about. And I'm glad that she was able to bring light to it and to talk about it through the contents of this book. But of course, as you can tell, I ended up giving this one 5 out of 5 stars. I expect nothing less. This was phenomenal. I definitely will be doing a reread. I need to reread her other books as well, but this was great. I can't wait to see what Elizabeth Acevedo is going to do in the future. The next book that I ended up reading is Legend Born by Tracy Dion, which is taking the booktube community by storm. Everybody is trying to get their hands on Legendborn. Everyone wants to read Legendborn, and honestly, I cannot blame anybody, because when I wrote my review for this book, I definitely said that this is easily one of the best debut fantasies, YA debut fantasies of 2020, and that holds true. It is an absolutely epic book. It is so good. So Legendborn focuses on a young girl, well, 16-year-old girl by the name of Bree, who is grieving the loss of her mother, and she ends up going to this early college program at UNC Chapel Hill, and it is there on her first night that she sees a magical creature attack someone, and she gets sucked into this whole world of what are called Legendborns. And she also has her own magic, which she did not realize that she had, because of the fact that she was able to withstand the memory erasing that a Merlin was attempting to do, which you will figure all of this stuff out once you read the book. And then she figures out that these Legendborn are actually all descendants of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, and there is so much complexity to this book. So where do I even begin without doing like a 20-minute review? So I'm going to try to make this as short as possible. What is so amazing about this book is that I am familiar with Arthurian legends. It's no surprise to me. I was really fascinated with them when I was a younger kid. I don't know why, so I wasn't really surprised by that. However, the world building in this book is phenomenal. The criticisms that I had for A Song of Race and Ruins in terms of world building is exactly what I got in this one, okay? This is the type of world building that I like to see. It was slow and steady. It didn't reveal so much about the plot, but it was enough that we understood exactly what was going on. There were even pronunciation guides within the content of the text, which is amazing. It also tackled so many contemporary issues. It looks at grief. I believe that Tracy, I think I saw in a tweet, she lost her mother, her stepfather, and her father within a couple of years of each other. I mean, that's all of her parental figures she has completely lost. And she really, you can see how much she really dives into the whole process of grieving, because Bree is going through this grieving process while figuring all this stuff out, and she's not handling her grief well. And it's much to be said about Black mental health and normalizing speaking to counselors or therapists. And it's just so many different aspects of this that I think were beautifully done, that I feel like Tracy was able to include because of her own personal experiences. I think that there's a lot to be said about Black people having to function in predominantly white spaces. There's this interesting conversation about Bree going to UNC Chapel Hill, which is considered a PWI, which is a predominantly white institution. I went to a PWI as a Black student, and it is a hell of an experience doing that. You may not think so, but it is, instead of going to an HBCU, which is a historically Black college or university. And Tracy touches on that. There is so much history laced in here about how Black people have had to, not just in terms of like attending a PWI, but what it was like when these institutions were built and Black people weren't given the same access. And even in terms of magic, how Black people have to differ in terms of containing their magic and not revealing it for their own personal safety, whereas white people have been able to use and flaunt their magic. There's this discussion of root magic and just blood magic, and this was just such a beautifully written book. It's long and the text is extremely small, but it's well worth a read. I just genuinely thought that this was just so well put together, and I loved it, and I cannot wait to see what's gonna happen with this next book in the series. I definitely think this has great representation. There are queer characters in here. There are characters from just all different types of backgrounds, and I just love Bree. I really do. I love Bree so much, and I feel so much for her because you see so much of the pain that she deals with, and you get to learn so much about her family, and it's just great, y'all. Please, if you ever get the opportunity to pick up Legendborn, please pick up Legendborn. I low-key am itching to reread it already, and that says a lot. So I may reread this before the year's over with, because it really was just that good. And if you can't tell, I mean, I definitely gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I have is Let Me Love You by Alexandria House. This is the first book in the McLean Brothers series, and it is phenomenal. Oh my goodness. So if you've never heard of the McLean Brothers series, please just go ahead and pick up the books, because this first one just had me melting. But it is about a man by the name of Everett, who is a rap artist. He's huge. He's been in the game for a long time, and his rap name or industry name is Big South. And our other main character is Joe, and Joe has been going through some issues because she was separated from her ex-husband, and he left her essentially after he found out that she was pregnant. He changed his mind, said he didn't want kids anymore, and she kind of just decided that she was going to take the opportunity to raise her daughter by herself and make a way for herself. And then she ends up meeting Everett through the company that she works for. It's like a jewelry design company that she works for, and she is commissioned by him to work on a piece. And then of course they end up falling in love, and To me, y'all, it was just really about the way that Everett treated Joe with so much respect and high regard. And he didn't treat her just like, oh my gosh, I'm treating her like you're a queen. Like, it wasn't about that. It was just about the fact that he just really loved her as much as he loved himself. And it was so transparent on page that he wanted to do nothing more than to make sure that she was happy and that they had a great relationship that was based on trust and honesty and communication and loyalty. And it was just like the perfect romance. Of course, there were issues along the way. Joe definitely had a lot of issues because she's dating a celebrity, and with that came a lot of insight to her personal life that she didn't want, and then some things from her personal life come to the forefront that she didn't necessarily want to be in the public eye, and having to deal with that was a lot for her, which is understandable. I know some people have some criticisms about how Joe's a little self-deprecating, and I understand why. Like, going from being someone who lives, for lack of a better term, a normal day-to-day life, and then being thrown into the industry world where everything that you do, wear, say, like how you look is just held under a microscope. I can understand why she felt self-conscious a lot of times when she was dating Big South. Not because she wasn't good enough, but because it was like two different worlds to be in. Living a normal life and then living in the spotlight was just a very jarring experience for her. So I get why she had some difficulty adjusting and stuff like that. And I just really, really appreciated her growing and trusting and loving, and them growing together and working through all of their issues. This was just so great. I cannot wait to read the rest of the books. I think that Everett, just hands down, I know that the other books are good, but I really do feel like Everett is going to be my fave because he just, that cover, he just, if that's what Everett looks like, child, if I find me an Everett, I'll change the game. I'll change the game. I will change the game. I will stop. I will lay it all down for Everett. So yes, I really did end up enjoying it, and I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. The next book that I ended up reading was for review, and it was Loretta Little Looks Back. And this is by Andrea Davis Pickney, and the illustrations were done by Brian Pickney. I am not going to talk about this one really at all because of the fact that I've done a full reading vlog and review of this one, which I will link in the card symbol above. But this is specifically just about a exploration of three characters from the 1940s to, I believe, like the 1960s, maybe even a little bit earlier than that. But it explores the experience of Black individuals from the time of sharecropping all the way up into the civil rights movement. So it was really great. Like I said, don't want to talk about it too much because I do have a video for that one, so I definitely would recommend checking it out, but I ended up giving that one 4 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I read was Escaping Exodus, and this is by Nikki Drayden. This is the first book in the Escaping Exodus series. It may just end up being a duology, we're not even really sure, but we actually did a complete live show for this, and when I say we, I mean myself, Harley, Chloe, Bree, and Erica. So I'll make sure I link that live show in the card symbol above for you all to check out. This is such an interesting science fiction book. I definitely feel like this prompted me to want to read more science fiction. I actually went on Twitter and was like, oh, this is what science fiction is like. I definitely want to read more of it because this was just so good. This focuses on two perspectives of Adala and Seske, as they are part of this community that actually is in space, but they live on this beast that's from space. They take over these beasts and they actually clear out some aspects of it and live there and function there type of situation. I'm trying to dance around a lot of it because I don't want to spoil too much of it, but it just chronicles both of these characters as they work through this society, which is a matriarchal society, and you end up figuring out some stuff about each one of these characters and what their duties end up becoming. And we talked about this a lot during the live show, so like I said, make sure you check out the live show. There are some spoilers towards like the middle and end of the live show. I think the first part of it we kind of tried to keep it spoiler free, but one of the main criticisms that we've all had about this book is that it should have been longer, because she definitely needed to do a little bit more character development. Her character development stops really short, but her world building is phenomenal. I think that's why I was like, oh, I want to read more science fiction, because her world building was just so good in this book. It was just so good. It is completely like absurd in some ways, where you're like, oh my gosh, like how would you think of something like this? But it was just epic. And I have never read a book where there is so much focus on a matriarchal society, and I love that that's what we got from this. And then we see like the advantages and the disadvantages, and we see how this community of individuals functions by living on this space beast. And they are actually like parasites almost. I hate to say it, but they're using this animal in order to remain and function and live. It is so weird, and I'm giving a horrible synopsis of it, but trust me when I say it is a good book. We all enjoyed it to a degree. We all had that criticism of thinking it should be longer and that she needed to focus a little bit on her character development, but we'll see how this next book is going to end up going, and I ended up giving that one 4 out of 5 stars. All right, y'all, so that is it. That is my wrap up for September. I hope you all have enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments below what you've read in September. I know this is super late. I mean, by the time this goes up, it'll probably be like the 14th of October. So it's a late one, but it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And I really hope that I read as many good books in October as I did in September, because it just really was a good reading month. But as always, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button. All of the links to my social media and ways to support my channel will be down in the description box below. As always, I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon, evening, day, wherever you may be. Bye.